Why repetition changes you more than insight. Breathe. The pattern you never say out loud. There is a moment you recognize but never announce. The moment when things finally get quiet and you feel uncomfortable instead of peaceful. No emergency, no problem to solve, no one demanding anything. And still, something in you stays alert, scanning, waiting, as if calm is suspicious, as if stillness forgot to send an invitation. Most people think this means they are broken, or undisciplined, or bad at meditation. They are none of those things. This is a trained nervous system doing its job too well. You learn to function while slightly tense. You learn to think while holding your breath. You learned to feel alive through pressure, urgency, motion, not because you chose it, but because repetition taught it. And now, when you try to relax, your body does not argue. It just ignores you. That quiet frustration you feel when nothing changes after a few deep breaths. That subtle urge to check your phone halfway through stillness. That thought that says, "This should be working by now." That is not a failure of focus. That is familiarity protecting itself. The nervous system does not change through understanding. It changes through exposure, through duration, through gentle, boring, consistent proof that safety is not temporary. Insight excites the mind. Repetition convinces the body. This is why short practices feel nice but fade fast. They visit calm without staying long enough to be believed. Like knocking on a door and leaving before anyone answers. 111 breaths is not symbolic. It is not sacred math. It is not a personality test for spiritual people. It is time. Time long enough for the body to stop negotiating. Time long enough for signals to repeat until they become background truth. Time long enough for effort to give up and regulation to take over. At first, nothing dramatic happens. No visions, no breakthroughs, no life review montage, just subtle resistance, subtle boredom, subtle thoughts saying this is unnecessary. Those thoughts are not distractions. They are evidence you reached the edge of habit. Stay there, because on the other side of repetition, the nervous system learns a new baseline, and the mind follows quietly, pretending it planned this all along. Breathe, slowly enough that the body notices you are not in a hurry anymore. And if part of you thinks this sounds almost too simple to matter, good. Complexity has had plenty of chances already. Breathe to that. Why your body does not care. What you believe. There is an assumption hiding in most inner work that once you understand something, change should follow politely. You learn about stress, you learn about trauma, you learn about breath, awareness, presence. And still, your body reacts the same way at the same moments. Because belief lives upstairs, regulation lives downstairs. Your nervous system does not speak insight. It speaks rhythm, pressure, timing, repetition. It listens to what happens again, and again, and again. This is where people get quietly annoyed. They say, "I know this already." Yes, and your body does not. The body does not respond to meaning. It responds to signals, electrical, chemical, mechanical. Every inhale slightly activates. Every long exhale slightly releases. One cycle barely registers. 10 cycles feel pleasant. 100 cycles start rewriting expectation. Not because you tried harder, because the signals stayed consistent long enough to become familiar. Familiarity is the real teacher. The nervous system trusts what repeats without drama. It distrusts intensity. It ignores motivation. It relaxes into predictability. This is why extreme experiences fade, and why boring practices change lives. 111 slow breaths create a field effect, like standing near a steady fire instead of flashing a lighter once. Carbon dioxide slowly rises. Blood chemistry shifts. Heart rhythm smooths. Brain noise softens its grip. Time perception loosens. Thoughts stop racing for relevance. Silence stops feeling like a threat. Nothing mystical yet. Just physiology doing exactly what it does every time. Annoyingly reliable, almost insulting. And here is the part no one likes to hear. If you stop early, the system does not fail. It simply returns to what it knows. Not because you are weak, because repetition was incomplete. Change is not a moment. It is rehearsal. Each breath is a rehearsal of safety. Each exhale a quiet instruction. We are not running. We are not bracing. We are still here. Eventually, the body believes you. Not because you convinced it, because you stayed. Breathe. Let the breath be unremarkable enough to be trusted. The mind may want a result. The body wants consistency. Give it that, and it will do the rest. Without asking permission, without applause, breathe to that. The quiet place, where identity actually lives. Most people think identity is a story, your history, your personality, your preferences. What you say when someone asks, "Who are you?" That answer is decorative. Identity lives deeper, in timing, in reflex, in how fast your body decides something is safe or dangerous before thought shows up pretending it helped. You do not react to life as it is. You react to what your nervous system expects. This is the part no one announces because it sounds unsettling. Your sense of self is largely a prediction machine, a pattern generator, a loop that says, "Last time felt like this." So prepare. Preparation becomes posture. Posture becomes breath. Breath becomes chemistry. Chemistry becomes perception. And suddenly, who you are feels very convincing. This is where the observer effect quietly enters. Not as physics trivia, as lived experience. What you repeatedly observe inside yourself stabilizes. Not because you judged it, because attention without interruption amplifies signal. When the breath slows and stays slow, something odd happens. The observer stops interfering, not watching to fix, just witnessing long enough for coherence to form. Coherence is when systems agree. Heart rhythm aligns, breath rhythm smooths, brain activity synchronizes instead of competing. No effort, no mantra, just timing lining up like instruments tuning themselves. And here is the subtle joke. The moment coherence appears, identity softens. Thoughts still arise, but they have less authority. Emotions still move, but they no longer hijack the room. You do not become blank, you become spacious. People often say, "I felt like myself again." What they mean is, the noise stopped impersonating them. 111 breaths creates enough duration for this shift. Not instantly, gradually, like fog lifting when the sun stops rushing. The body learns, I can stay here without collapsing. The mind follows, slightly embarrassed it doubted this. And the observer changes, not through effort, through steadiness. You are not watching the breath. The breath is teaching you how to watch without gripping. Breathe. Let the witnessing be gentle, almost bored. Identity does not need to be destroyed. it needs to be regulated. When the system settles, who you are reorganizes naturally. Without force, without drama, without another self-improvement campaign. Quietly, reliably, like a field returning to balance. Breathe to that. Why change feels threatening even when it is good. There is a strange contradiction most people never name. You want calm, yet when it begins to arrive, something inside tightens. Not fear exactly, more like unease, as if the ground shifted without asking for permission. This is not self-sabotage. It is orientation. Your nervous system is built to protect continuity. Not happiness, not growth. Continuity. Anything unfamiliar, even if beneficial, registers as potential risk until proven otherwise. This is why improvement often feels destabilizing before it feels relieving. When you slow the breath long enough, the system loses its usual reference points. The constant tension that once said, "I am ready," disappears. And the body asks, "Then what am I supposed to do now?" This is where many people quit. They interpret this moment as something going wrong. It is the opposite. You are witnessing the system between identities. Old regulation dissolving, new regulation not yet familiar. A brief gap where control feels absent. Shamanic traditions understood this without terminology. They knew the nervous system needs thresholds, crossings, time spent in unfamiliar calm until it stops feeling dangerous. Modern language calls this neuroplasticity. Hermetic language calls it transmutation. Both mean the same thing. A pattern releasing its grip because repetition weakened it. Breathing is the bridge because it sits between voluntary and automatic. You guide it, then it guides you. Each long exhale is a vote against urgency. Each pause a refusal to perform readiness. Over time, the body stops bracing for impact that never arrives. This is not collapse, it is reorganization. Energy stops leaking into vigilance. Attention returns to sensation. Awareness widens without effort. And here comes the quiet humor. You may notice life feels slightly less dramatic. Fewer internal monologues. Less emotional background music. A strange sense that problems look smaller when you stop feeding them adrenaline. This can feel boring to a system addicted to intensity. That boredom is healing. It means the alarm learned to rest. 111 breaths holds you inside this transition long enough for the system to update its expectations. Not through belief, through experience. Nothing terrible happens. Nothing needs fixing. Calm survives. Breathe. Let the unfamiliar become ordinary. Change does not arrive loudly. It arrives when the body stops resisting quiet. And once the nervous system learns that safety can be sustained, it no longer demands proof. Breathe to that. Why change feels threatening even when it is good. There is a strange contradiction most people never name. You want calm, yet when it begins to arrive, something inside tightens. Not fear exactly, more like unease, as if the ground shifted without asking for permission. This is not self-sabotage. It is orientation. Your nervous system is built to protect continuity. Not happiness, not growth. Continuity. Anything unfamiliar, even if beneficial, registers as potential risk until proven otherwise. This is why improvement often feels destabilizing before it feels relieving. When you slow the breath long enough, the system loses its usual reference points. The constant tension that once said, "I am ready," disappears. And the body asks, "Then what am I supposed to do now?" This is where many people quit. They interpret this moment as something going wrong. It is the opposite. You are witnessing the system between identities. Old regulation dissolving, new regulation not yet familiar. A brief gap where control feels absent. Shamanic traditions understood this without terminology. They knew the nervous system needs thresholds, crossings, time spent in unfamiliar calm until it stops feeling dangerous. Modern language calls this neuroplasticity. Hermetic language calls it transmutation. Both mean the same thing. A pattern releasing its grip because repetition weakened it. Breathing is the bridge because it sits between voluntary and automatic. You guide it, then it guides you. Each long exhale is a vote against urgency. Each pause a refusal to perform readiness. Over time, the body stops bracing for impact that never arrives. This is not collapse. It is reorganization. Energy stops leaking into vigilance. Attention returns to sensation. Awareness widens without effort. And here comes the quiet humor. You may notice life feels slightly less dramatic. Fewer internal monologues. Less emotional background music. A strange sense that problems look smaller when you stop feeding them adrenaline. This can feel boring to a system addicted to intensity. That boredom is healing. It means the alarm learned to rest. 111 breaths holds you inside this transition long enough for the system to update its expectations. Not through belief, through experience. Nothing terrible happens. Nothing needs fixing. Calm survives. Breathe. Let the unfamiliar become ordinary. Change does not arrive loudly. It arrives when the body stops resisting quiet. And once the nervous system learns that safety can be sustained, it no longer demands proof. Breathe to that, Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Why consistency rewrites reality. Quietly. At some point, a subtle realization lands, not as insight, as relief. You stop asking whether the practice is working, because something else changed first. You stop negotiating with yourself. The nervous system loves agreement. Same time, same rhythm, same duration. Not perfect, just familiar. This is where coherence stops being a concept and becomes lived. Heart, breath, and attention stop interrupting each other, like roommates who finally agreed on the temperature. Quantum language would say the field stabilized. Psychology would say the system habituated. Mysticism would shrug and say, yes, that. When a pattern repeats without force, identity adjusts to match it. Not through motivation, through alignment. You do not need to convince yourself you are calm. Your body already decided. And this is the part people underestimate. Consistency does not feel heroic. It feels almost forgettable, which is exactly why it works. Intensity spikes the system. Repetition teaches it. 111 breaths is long enough for the system to stop waiting for an ending. It settles into the process itself. And when the system stops anticipating the finish line, regulation deepens. Thoughts still appear. They just stop asking for attention like insecure interns. Emotions still move. They move through instead of setting up camp. You become less reactive, not because you tried to be better, but because the baseline changed. And here, quietly, something human slips in. Thank you if you liked videos. That would make me smile. Not because approval matters, but because connection does. And regulated systems recognize resonance when they feel it. You are not training discipline, you are training familiarity. Familiarity with stillness, with space, with not needing to perform urgency. Reality responds to coherence the same way mirrors respond to light. Without commentary, without opinion. Breathe. Let this feel ordinary enough to last. You are not becoming someone new. You are rehearsing what safety feels like until it stops being special. That is how change holds. Breathe to that. When calm becomes the default, not the goal. At the end of this, nothing dramatic should happen. And that is how you know it worked. No peak, no emotional speech, no moment where you announce a new version of yourself to the universe. Just something quieter. You notice you respond a second later than you used to. You notice your breath corrects itself before you intervene. You notice tension leave without needing permission. This is not self-control. This is regulation taking over the job you kept forcing the mind to do. The nervous system learned something simple and irreversible. Calm can last. Safety is not fragile. Nothing bad follows stillness. Once that lesson installs, effort becomes unnecessary. This is why 111 breaths matters. Not because the number is special, but because it is long enough to cross a threshold, short enough to be repeatable, long enough to be convincing. In physics, coherence happens when waves stay aligned long enough to amplify instead of cancel. In biology, systems stabilize when signals repeat without contradiction. In lived experience, peace appears when the body stops asking what comes next. The observer effect shows up here too, not as theory, as habit. What you repeatedly witness without reacting to reorganizes itself. Thoughts soften when they are no longer chased. Emotions settle when they are no longer argued with. Identity loosens when it no longer needs defense. You did not fix yourself. You stopped interrupting the repair process. And here is the final quiet truth. The goal was never relaxation. The goal was familiarity with regulation. When calm becomes familiar, you stop reaching for it. When safety becomes ordinary, you stop questioning it. When coherence stabilizes, life feels less personal and more workable. You will still feel things. You will still think. You will still care. You will just recover faster, react less, and trust silence without needing to fill it. That is not transcendence. That is a well-trained nervous system. Annoyingly simple, embarrassingly effective. Breathe. Let the practice end without trying to hold on to it. Nothing to achieve. Nothing to conclude. Just a system that remembers how to settle. Breathe to that.